Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today we're going to talk about Dungeons & Dragons, and we're specifically going to talk about the 2023 D&D OGL 1.1 leak Firestorm. And specifically today, we're going to talk about cache and cachet. Okay, what kind of cachet? American cachet, cultural cachet, intellectual cachet. Okay, because that's what to me, in my humble opinion, that's what Dungeons & Dragons is actually about today. And the part that every other channel is talking to you about is the cache, right? But they're not talking to you about the cachet. And that's the problem, is we get a lot of conversation where they think to a point and then they stop thinking, right? And then they start echoing, right? I hope, I try not to echo, right? And I think I'm hitting it, because I get a lot of people come here and go, ain't nobody saying what you saying. Or like, and it's the truth. And it's not. And hey, let's not get it twisted. I have a million ideas in my head that I agree with other people on. I just don't waste your time with them, right? If I don't have a unique take, I don't talk about it, right? So I got lots of stuff that echoes what other people have said. I just don't waste your time with it. Just want you to know that. All right, let's get into this. Okay. So first and foremost, I have a link below for Flutes and Lutes. Are you guys familiar with these two? It's like a married couple who who do some D&D, some Dungeons & Dragons commentary, just like me, right? And they have a great channel, and basically, link below, they said that Matt Colville of MCDM called all this about a year ago, right? Now they're close. They're right. They're almost right, and it's a brilliant video. It's one of the best videos I've seen on this subject. Right now, one of the things I'm struggling with is, like, there's just so many of these channels, like, got to be 100 of them. They're like, oh, those Hasbro corporate greed mongers, they're stealing OGL from us, and they're leaving these OGL 1.0 creators out to dry, and and it's just here's a lawyer saying how they can't revoke it, right? Even though, like, people are going, well, technically they can't revoke it, but functionally they can throttle this thing till it dies. No two ways about it, right? Like, and so there's just a lot of echoing, right? So let's get into something. So Flutes and Lutes, boy, man, I'll put my link below is going to be right to the part where they have Matthew Colville saying what this is really about is the VTT, right? And saying, and then literally saying, hey, when this VTT drops, they're going to want to cut out small indie creators. He says it flat out, right? And he said it a year ago, right? And this is another thing that I've been saying. Like, people are like, oh no, this is terrible, it's a surprise. I'm like, this ain't no surprise, man. This has always been known. This has always been known. This has always been known. You set up a hot dog stand on a mansion owner's lawn, right? And now you're surprised when you're getting kicked off the lawn. And now, I'll put this into this video rather than doing a whole video on it. Let's talk about Ryan Dancy. Ryan Dancy's like, oh, this was always meant to be perpetual, right? I don't think for 1 minute he's lying. I think he's saying exactly what he believes, right? But here's the problem, right? I think Ryan Dancy absolutely meant for the OGL 1.0 to be forever. That's nice. That's cute, right? But this is the real world, right? Like, we know when we hear a promise that's ludicrous. Anybody smart with their head screwed on correctly knows when you hear a promise that is going to blow away in the wind like smoke, right? This is not a joke. President Joseph Biden promised that during this term, he said, if you elect me president, I will cure cancer. That's not a joke. I'm not making that up. He literally said it, right? Now, when he said it, everybody's like, you're a politician. We know you're not going to take something that people have been working on for 150 years. Literally billions have been dumped into this. Everybody was like, that's just a lie. That ain't a real promise, right? Like, and nobody expected that to be kept, right? And here's another one, right? Every president rolls up and goes, here's my 10-year plan on climate change. That's nice. That's cute, right? I even know you, like, but here's the problem. You ain't in for 10 years. You're in for 4, right? And Ryan Dancy knew that he was not going to be at the owners of Dungeons & Dragons forever. He even knew that it may get a new owner. He had no ability he had never had any ability to promise forever. Guess what? I'll give you another little hint here. Nobody has the strength to promise forever, right? Like no one person. And frankly, even institutions, right? Like we know, right? Like, our constitutions lasted 250 years. How long is America going to last? Probably 3 millennia, right? But we ain't got forever. Nobody can promise you forever. And if you thought for 1 second that the OGL 1.0 would last forever, that's on you, right? That's on you for wishing on rainbows and unicorn horns, man. Like no one with a brain in their head thought the OGL would last forever. That's ludicrous. Okay, all right. So here we are. So Flutes and Loots shows Matthew Colville, and he's like, this is about the VTT, the virtual tabletop, right? And they're going to take everybody in there, and they're going to make a crap ton of money, and it's going to transform Dungeons & Dragons. Now, is he right? He's mostly right. He's literally 80% right. This is the Pareto rule, right? He's got it 80% correct, but there's 20% he's missing. All right, so first of all, is Dungeons & Dragons about cash? CASH, $ cash. Yes, right? The VTT is going to bring millions and millions, hundreds of millions, maybe billions, right? When it works, it's possible it'll fail, right? But the VTT will bring in a ton of cash, CASH, okay? And this is the part you're missing, okay? And this is the part I'm going to tell you. Dungeons & Dragons is about cash, CASH, right? CASH. And I am not against that. I'm an American capitalist, baby. I want the owners of Dungeons & Dragons to be cash happy, cash full, cash on, okay? Now, here's the part that Matthew Colville missed, okay? Matthew Colville missed cachet, and this is the part about Dungeons & Dragons, and this is my channel, right? My channel is about you don't know what Dungeons & Dragons is, right? And this is the part that everybody's missing right now. They're like, hey, they're going to set up a VTT and everything's going to go digital. Wrong, wrong, wrong. Wrong sandwich with a nice layer of wrong sauce spread on it, with wrong lettuce, wrong protein, cut with a wrong knife. Wrong. Okay? First of all, digital is absolutely going to be part of Dungeons & Dragons going forward. Okay? It's going to be the 80% for the schmucks. Right? And they're going to bring the cash in. Right? And that's not you and that's not me. Nobody who's ever going to be playing on a VTT, as their primary, as their favorite form of Dungeons & Dragons, listen to this channel. Right? We know the real value of Dungeons & Dragons is cachet. Okay? We know that Dungeons & Dragons is an element of Americana. We know that the most charismatic, confident, intelligent people in the world play it. We know the overlap between coastal elites and D&D dungeon masters and players is almost 90%. Right? Dungeons & Dragons owns American intellectuals. I don't think there's an American intellectual in this country who hasn't played Dungeons & Dragons. I don't think you can call yourself an American intellectual if you haven't played Dungeons & Dragons at some point. Now, maybe you were at Yale and you went to a party and you played for an hour and you didn't like it, right? That's fine. But the reality is you don't make it. You don't even put on the American intellectual hat until you've played Dungeons & Dragons. And it's okay that you played in a party at Yale and didn't like it and bounced out. You'll be back 15 years later, right? When you're like, hey, maybe I don't want to spend another night in the pub, right? And I want to do something of significance. Maybe I want to read a bit, right? Maybe I want to grow my brain rather than destroy it, right? And so that, and then, so the cultural cachet, and then cultural cachet, right? Every single woke issue, every SJ, and everyone's like, oh, I don't like Dungeons & Dragons, all that woke SJW stuff. Guess what? That's the modern battlefield, baby, right? It ain't that schmuck it ain't like Zelensky beating Putin, right, with our leftovers, right? That ain't the real battlefield today. That barely even matters anymore. People have pretty much forgotten it. The real battlefield today is woke and SJW issues, and D&D 5e is all over it, right? And they're like, we are actually going, like, get this. Who's the MLK today? Who's the MLK? It's your dungeon master, right? It's game designers from Washington State, right? That's the issue, up in Seattle, right? Like, we are discussing, like, literally, you know, I did a video on when does life begin in context of Dungeons and Dragons, because the one D&D literally said, we want every dungeon master to start thinking about how every species breeds, right? They're like, we want, we're going to put wheelchairs in dungeons. We want to talk about species. We want to talk about, preference issues, LGBTQ, everything, every single American, SJW woke issue is decided first and foremost on D&D, because the most charismatic, confident, intelligent people in the world are there, and we're doing abstract iteration modeling all the time, right? And this is the part that I want you to understand, okay? There's a tension at the design studios in Seattle, Washington, right? Where, where all this goes down, right? On the West Coast, where Dungeons & Dragons is designed, right? Where Wizards Coast is. The creatives are there, the bean counters are there, and they are listening intently to the D&D community, right? And there's a tension, and the bean counters want the cash to flow, right? But the creatives make sure the cachet flows, okay? And that's why those physical books aren't going anywhere. They are not going anywhere. And the reason why is the 80%, the common schmucks, are going to play the VTT, right? But you and me, we control Dungeons & Dragons. We determine its direction, right? And we really determine the momentum and the direction of Dungeons & Dragons. And and guess what? Okay? We are the head of the dragon, right? The VTT is going to be the tail. It's the people playing the VTT are literally the dragon's butt cheeks. We are the eyes, the brain, the mouth, the breath weapon, right? The people who are reading the physical books, right? They are screenwriters in Hollywood. They are CEOs. They are doctors, lawyers. There's not a single one of them anymore that's a laborer, generally, right? If you're a laborer and you play in D&D, you're probably scooting over to OSR right now, right? Yeah, and again, laborers, the red pill, they ain't going to be on that woke SJW stuff. They aren't going to have any cultural conversations, right? Like, generally, there's always exceptions, but I don't really talk about exceptions. I talk about macro, right? I'm talking to macro. I'm talking to 51%, right? And that's the part that's missing. You don't understand that Dungeons & Dragons is about cash, C-A-S-H, and cachet, C-A-C-H-E. American cachet, cultural cachet, intellectual cachet, coastal elite cachet, right? And I will tell you right now, Hasbro ain't gonna let an ounce of it go, okay? And yes, you're 100% right. Some of their suits don't even know about cachet, right? But that's just the issue. The creatives are very powerful, and they know how to work around the suits. This is already happening on Universe Beyond, right? So the suits are like, the Warhammer 40K world is not part of Dungeons & Dragons. It's a Universe Beyond. They're not connected. And then you're like, hey, okay. Is that the Soul Ring in the middle of the Warhammer 40K universe? Isn't the Soul Ring also in Dominaria? So that magical object is put on your packaging, in your lore, in your fiction. All of that is right there, right? And the creatives, they just virtually sucker punched the bean counters, because the bean counters can't keep up. They don't know about lore. They don't know about exciting things that happen, and they don't understand world mixing and world stranding and world building. They don't know about any of that, right? Like, the bean counters are like, oh, hey, we got an official Lego set coming up, and the creatives say, yes, we do. That's gonna give you money, right? But what they don't tell them is, yeah, and you know what? We made sure, right? The winner literally has minifigs in it. We could have picked a mimic that had no minis, right? But we made sure that the Lego set had terrain, miniatures, right? So that every single Dungeons & Dragons world, in my humble opinion, this is what the creatives did, right? They're like, oh yeah, of course, the Dungeons & Dragons Lego set will contain Dungeons & Dragons miniatures, right? And those miniatures are going to connect right up to the Office set, right up to the Friends set, right up to every set Lego's ever made. And what you don't get, Bean Counter, is that we're making sure that the cachet flows, right? And that literally 1,000 worlds are connected to to Dominaria, Forgotten Realms, Kryn, right? We're making sure that that Matt LeBlanc's friend character is going to be in Dominaria and in the Forgotten Realms, right? Rachel and Ross, will be showing up in your next Forgotten Realms campaign. That's cachet. That is cachet, right? And so you have a whole bunch of people looking at this OGL 1.1 leak, and they're like, this is all about cash, those greedy corporates. No, it's about cash, and it's about cachet. And we continue to go round and round and round until all y'alls understand what I'm saying. That Dungeons & Dragons is more than you think. It's about cash and cachet. All that's my humble opinion. I'd love to hear your humble opinion. Please get in the comments. Send your traffic. Please consider liking and subscribing, and have a wonderful millennium.